Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and fellas, we could do this podcast, but what do you say we go down to Butch's and get some beers instead?
That sounds lovely. We could do the podcast there. I'm sure lots of fascinating stories told at Butch's that would make for excellent podcast material.
And don't forget, fantastic music program at Butch's.
Totally true. From the great Hoagie Carmichael, who is one of the stars of the best years of our lives. It is the Academy Awards Best Picture winner from 1946, the year we've been discussing in this season.
The season about 1946.
That is this season.
Hoagie Carmichael, sing-a-ding-a-ding.
Well, he mostly plays the piano in this movie rather than singing, right?
Have we done a movie with Hoagie Carmichael before? I feel like we did, and he was the highlight of that one. Not to say he's the highlight of this one, but he does stand out whenever he's on screen.
Yeah, he is definitely enjoyable to watch. And you know what? I think you're right. I think we did do a film with Hoagie Carmichael before, but maybe not. I'm just looking at what movies he's been in.
Wasn't he in the Las Vegas Story or something like that?
He is in the Las Vegas Story.
That's where I'm remembering him from. Yeah.
Yeah, with Victor Mature, who we've talked about, but we did not do an episode on that particular movie, although I have also seen it because it is the Las Vegas Story.
And we have talked about Victor Mature before in The Robe. So,
right. Yeah, and I think that might have been why you watched it and maybe why it came up briefly in a previous episode. But yeah, of course, he's known as a musician, but he is an enjoyable screen presence here as Butch. Jason, clearly you thought Butch's was the highlight of this film.
I mean, I thought the first hour of the movie was the highlight of this film. It's just tough to sustain what that first hour brought after another hour 50 follows it, with the story transitioning away from them coming right back from the war. Like, that to me was the real height of the emotional conflicts and kind of issues that these three soldiers are going through. That said, it's a good movie, very, very good performances. So I'm not hating on it. I just love my man Hoag, Josh.
Yeah, I like him too. And this is a very long movie, certainly almost 3 hours long. And I agree with you that first hour is probably the strongest. But my attention was held the entire time. I didn't feel like this movie dragged. I started watching it thinking, oh, this might be a chore to get through such a long film. And it didn't feel like a chore to me. And Jason, I know you are someone who often watches movies in pieces, and you were telling me how you sat down to watch this and thought you'd only watch the first hour and then watch the whole thing. So I feel like it probably was holding your attention too.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to reiterate, that's just what my schedule dictates at this point in my life. It's not like I have a terribly short attention span, even though I don't know what we're talking about anymore because I saw something shiny on the wall. No, I did watch it. I just think the subject matter and the immediacy of that first hour was the stuff that really had my utmost interest. So after they kind of settled back in, I just didn't think it was as taut, and as much of a risky high wire as they were on in that first hour.
Yeah, I suppose. But I do like the idea that it is getting into the everyday lives. It's not just that one moment right when they come back, but is how they can adjust in the longer term. And I thought that was interesting. This film stars Fredric March, Dana Andrews, and Harold Russell as the three veterans returning from World War II to the fictional Boone City, which I believe is meant to represent Cincinnati.
The Natty, Josh.
I was wondering, as I was watching that, it seemed like a sort of generic Midwestern city. I thought maybe St. Louis or something like that. Of course, it was shot in Southern California, but meant to represent, the heartland, the Midwest. As I was watching the movie, I thought of it maybe something like St. Louis. It's definitely meant to be a kind of heartland Midwestern city where they try to return to their lives. Of course, in actuality, shot in Southern California, but I thought it captured that feel of the heart of the country.
You ever been to Cincinnati, Josh?
I don't think so. I'm not sure if I've been to St. Louis either. I may have driven through St. Louis. I know you've been though, right? Didn't your brother go to college there?
Yeah, I based in St. Louis when I toured for stand up, college tour and everything. And my other base that time was Cincinnati because the guy I was touring with, his parents lived in Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, which I think is on the come up again, wasn't really impressive at the time. But what confuses me about Cincinnati, when you go to a new place, they're like, you go to New York, right? It's like, oh, you got to have pizza, you got to have bagels, right? The city, the food of the city, that's what they want you to have. Cincinnati, they want you to have Skyline chili, which is gross, Josh. It's spaghetti with diarrhea chili on top of it and cheese on top of it. You can get it 3 ways. With those 3, you get it 5 ways. Add some crackers and other crap, but you can get it 8 ways. It's not really the best look of a city to be like, here, eat this mediocre bowl of chili with spaghettis underneath.
I'm surprised, Jason. You're such an open-minded foodie. I didn't expect such vitriol over the signature dish of Cincinnati.
I mean, I ate it open-mindedly. I didn't go in thinking like this is going to be trash over here. I just didn't like it. I think most people from Cincinnati would tell you there's probably better chili out there too. But it is interesting that they're like, chili, not enough. We got to put it on spaghetti. Not enough carbs. Let's go get some crackers in there. Hey, also cheese. Well, what kind of cheese? We have spaghetti. Should we put Parmesan? Nah, we'll do a mix of like cheddar and American on top of there because it's chili, Josh. Yeah. Didn't love it. Yeah. Didn't love it, Josh.
Clearly. Yeah. Seemed like you have a lot of rage toward the chili there in Cincinnati.
No, I'd give it another try.
Okay. What do we think the signature dish of Boone City is, though?
Butch's baked beans.
Yeah, that sounds good. We don't see if they serve food at Butch's. I don't, although they do have like a very fancy looking waiter at one point, which I wouldn't have expected at Butch's when they all go on that first night and they're getting wasted at Butch's, and this kind of stuffy looking waiter keeps bringing them drinks. So I feel like if you got that guy, you probably do serve food.
Well, that also seems to be something of that time period. Didn't we just do that with the Killers? Didn't we just have something like that with the Killers at that bar that he was walking into in the fancy?
Yeah, you may be right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That whole maitre d' culture seems to have been lost to time.
Right. I feel like that's the case. I watch movies maybe a little earlier than this period, but every single person has like a butler. And I'm like, I don't think this single man in an apartment would have a butler, but they always do.
Well, maybe maybe they were just not out at the time and they had to come up with a plan to
it doesn't seem
sex.
like that kind of relationship. It's real. And even in this movie, right? When Al comes back, the Fredric March's character, who's clearly the most well-to-do of these three, and he returns to his home and he asks his wife what happened to the maid, and that they obviously had at one point, but the maid has, wartime shortages led them to have to let the maid go, unfortunately.
Everyone has to sacrifice.
Very true. So,
like their son, he sacrificed by being in the first 12 minutes of the movie and then not being in any rest of the movie for 2.5 hours. So.
That is true. It's not that noticeable because he doesn't play a large part in the story, but apparently this is the old studio system that the actor's contract with the studio ran out in the middle of shooting and they decided not to rehire him. So he just doesn't show up later in the movie.
He's just like the younger daughter on Family Matters. She went upstairs because was sick and she never came down until she became a porn star in real life.
They do mention him at one point later. I think Al says something about, our 2 kids or whatever. So they didn't forget. He's got school. He's busy with school.
He was doing science.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
So this movie was quite successful. It grossed $7.65 million on its initial release. It's one of these movies, like some other classics that we've talked about, that's been re-released a number of times, ultimately grossed $23.7 million over the course of re-releases on its budget of between $2 and $3 million. And one thing that I found was interesting, and I feel like we may have talked about this with other older films, things like Gone with the Wind, that at the time, this movie, it made more money because they were able to charge more for tickets because the movie was so long. And I feel like that's something that now if you made a really, like if Avengers tried to charge more money for tickets because it was long, people would go crazy. But I guess that's something they used to do.
Yeah, but they charge more money for tickets for so many other reasons now. So like, you know, we were just talking about Spider-Man and I saw it on that Screen X, which is like, hey, here's a screen in front of you, but also we're projecting it on the walls. But nothing was actually shot to utilize these walls, this aspect ratio. So we're just stretching the picture. You see an extra car on the street. Wasn't that worth paying $20 extra for?
Yeah, I agree. Screen X is garbage. But
Dave,
yeah,
you like
I
Screen
suppose,
X?
I don't. And
What?
you know I like my 4DX every once in a while, but Screen X sucks.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Dave coming with it today, Josh.
Yeah.
All right. But I mean, I guess that's true that, yeah, of course, none of those things existed back then. So it was about the length, but now we have all these other formats that they'll charge you extra money for. But I still feel like even though people are fine with paying extra money for Screen X or 4DX or IMAX or Dolby or whatever, for some reason, if you charge them extra money based on the running time factor, there would be riots.
I don't know about riots, but
Well,
the movie
metaphor.
industry is in such a tenuous position, although this year it's rebounded nicely, that just play nice with them. But I will say, prices or not, it is the most successfully financial film since Gone with the Wind came out. From that time, from 1939 to 1946, this is the next tentpole and successful financial film blockbusters. You get what I'm saying, even if I'm saying it terribly.
I do. People at this time, they loved their epics. They loved their long sagas, I guess. And this obviously doesn't take place over the same kind of time period as Gone with the Wind. And it is not as long, but it certainly feels like a big story. I think, Jason, you know, even though, like you said, the first hour was most immediate for you, I feel like you get to the end of the movie and you feel like you've really spent a lot of time with these people in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to what you're saying about, you know, people liking these long movies at the time, it's 1946, man. You know, no one's got a TV really. They're listening to radios, right? And this is the time, not only are they going to the movies, they're wearing suits to the movies. This is what people did. Did you ever see Cinema Paradiso? We covered it on this podcast, man. This is a big deal.
Yeah. And this could be, this could be your whole day's activities. You go to the theater. And I mean, especially at this time, not only are you seeing this 3-hour movie, but maybe it's got a cartoon at the beginning and a newsreel, and it's your whole damn day, really, right there.
You go to Butch's afterwards and you talk about what you just watched. That's what you do, man.
So true. We're really going to hang out at Butch's so much.
Yeah.
So this movie was also huge awards-wise. It was nominated for 8 competitive Oscars. It won 7 of those Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director for William Wyler, Best Actor for Fredric March, Best Supporting Actor for Harold Russell, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, and Best Original Score. The only nominated Oscar it did not win was for Best Sound. 2 honorary Oscars also went to people involved with this film. Harold Russell, who was not an actor at the time, he plays the Navy sailor who lost his hands during the war. He was an actual war veteran who had lost his hands. And interestingly, the Academy seemed to think that he would not have a chance at winning the competitive award. So they gave him this honorary award for, representation of veterans. And then he won the real award too. So he got 2. And Samuel Goldwyn, the producer of this film, was also awarded the Irving Thalberg Award, which is a periodic honorary award that they still give out for producers who have made a large impact in Hollywood. So really, this movie dominated the Oscars that year.
It's based on the 1945 novella by McKinley Cantor, Glory for Me, Josh.
And weirdly, the story of this is strange because Samuel Goldwyn, the producer, initiated this project after having seen, I think it was a Time magazine article about veterans coming home, and hired McKinley Cantor as the writer. And instead of writing a screenplay, he wrote a novel in blank verse, the most commercial of all formats. And then Goldwyn hired a different writer to write the actual screenplay. And then Cantor wasn't even happy with the movie. He felt like it didn't adapt his novel well. So a weird process to get to this.
That is very strange that an author wouldn't be happy with an adaptation of their work. Was it Robert E. Sherwood, Josh, who was the writer?
He's the screenwriter who ultimately wrote this screenplay. And I guess it's just, you're right, of course, that it's not uncommon for that to happen. But considering that both the novel or novella and the screenplay came from the producer of the movie and his idea, it's weird that that was the process that this sort of underwent.
Everything's weird. As Josh knows, Dave, you probably don't. I have this kids script out right now, kids movie, and we have a name director attached to it. And our best chance of getting it made is what they're telling me is to write it as a kid's book. So Amazon can release it as a kid's book and then buy the movie rights. And then you can turn it into a movie. And I said, you know what else we could turn into a movie is the screenplay for the movie that we've already written.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, you're right, is that there are definitely other modern examples where they go about it that way. They have an idea and they want to make a movie. And so they make a graphic novel first or a novel or something like that. I feel like, hasn't John August done that, where he made a whole series of novels? Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the purpose of making them into movies. I feel like, though, again, the blank verse novel was not necessarily the commercial direction and to get your movie.
How would you describe blank verse to people who don't know, Josh?
It's poetry that doesn't rhyme.
I'm into it.
All right. Well, maybe you can read this book and report back on it in our epilogue.
Hey, Josh, I'm a poet, and I wasn't even aware that I was one.
There you go. There it is right there. Beautiful, beautiful job. So there's also won Best Film at the BAFTAs, Best Picture at the Golden Globes, and a bunch of critics awards as well. Highly, highly acclaimed. Critics in general also very positive on this film. Bosley Crowther in the New York Times said, "It is seldom that there comes a motion picture which can be wholly and enthusiastically endorsed, not only as superlative entertainment, but as food for quiet and humanizing thought. Yet such a one opened last evening. The best years of our lives catches the drama of veterans returning home from war as no film or play or novel that we've yet heard of has managed to do. In telling the stories of three veterans who come back to the same hometown, it fully reflects the delicate tensions, the deep anxieties, and the gnawing despairs that surely have been experienced by most such fellows who have been through the same routine."
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the best aspect to it. We talked about in our documentary episode the PTSD that soldiers kind of go through. And in 41, right, we covered that movie that was rah-rah American propaganda wartime. What was it, Gary Cooper?
British.
No.
Right. Yeah. You were talking about Sergeant York. Yes. Which is about World War I. But yeah, yes, very much propaganda. Yeah.
But this is, and that's what gets you right away, is like you're getting to see like the other side of this, not just that they can't adapt, but that they can't even be back. And what's taken over for them is, their loyalty and allegiance to the other soldiers, their units, and being part of the war effort.
Right. I mean, and I think it's interesting, when we talked about Let There Be Light, the documentary, and one of the things about that was how it was suppressed by the government because it was commissioned by the government, and then they didn't want this kind of portrayal of soldiers coming home to be out there. Yet that movie ends with this very upbeat, optimistic, like, hey, and they got treatment and now they're all fine and they're going to go live totally normal lives. And this movie, while not like downbeat or depressing, and it doesn't have an unhappy ending, but I think this definitely leaves the door open for the idea that like these guys are going to continue to have difficulties. Their problems haven't all been solved. They're going to struggle beyond what we see in the movie. And I think it's interesting that, I mean, of course, the government didn't commission this movie and didn't have any control over it, but that this was so widely acclaimed and accepted, even with that kind of complex message.
I have to think one of it is, the honesty of it, but two is like, at that point in time, probably everyone knew someone who was overseas or part of the war effort back here. So, for lack of a better term, it had to hit home in a very immediate way.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, I think that is mentioned I think Crowther might have mentioned it in a part that I didn't include, but basically that, this could reflect the lives of people you know, or even you yourself. And then I'm sure that a good part of the audience for this was veterans themselves who would have seen some of their experience reflected. Harold Russell, of course, himself was a veteran. In reality, he lost his hands, I think, in actually like a training exercise. So he might not have even gone overseas, but he certainly was part of the war effort, like you said. And William Wyler, the director, as we talked about with John Huston rather, in that Let There Be Light episode, he was one of those 5 who came back. He went overseas and made propaganda films and participated in the war himself. So he had that experience as well.
I think this would probably, the other thing is, because it wasn't so upbeat and, just inauthentic, this probably was helpful to healing for many of the soldiers and family members who viewed it, as a unit.
Right. Yeah, no, I think so. And I think that's an important value of it. So James Agee in The Nation, though, felt like it maybe didn't quite capture that. He said, "The movie has plenty of faults, and the worst of them are painfully exasperating. Yet this is one of the very few American studio-made movies in years that seem to me profoundly pleasing, moving, and encouraging. At its worst, this story is very annoying in its patness, its timidity, its slithering attempts to pretend to face, and by that pretense to dodge in the most shameful way possible, its own fullest meanings and possibilities. In fact, it would be possible, I don't doubt, to call the whole picture just one long pious piece of deceit and self-deceit, embarrassed by hot flashes of talent, conscience, truthfulness, and dignity. Yet I feel 100 times more liking and admiration for the film than distaste or disappointment."
Whew. He just went hard at it. So.
He did, but it's weird where he's basically saying, oh, this fails in all these ways, and yet it's great.
Yeah, it's a strange review. I did not agree with the idea there that, like we just talked about, the authenticity, the emotional realness, that's what I thought was the best.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think he's being way too hard on it. Like, is it maybe slightly sugar-coated? Could it have been darker? I suppose, but I don't feel like it's pulling punches. Like I was just saying, I don't feel like it's wrapping things up in a contrived way or making you think that everything's going to work out okay for these men or that they don't have problems. I think it's serious while still delivering a movie that people can find entertaining, which is also important. You got a big love story and all this other stuff that people would enjoy watching.
I agree. I agree, Josh.
Right. So finally, Abel Green in Variety was very positive. He said, "The best years of our lives is one of the best pictures of our lives. As the post-war saga of the soda jerk who became an army officer, the banker who was mustered out as a sergeant, and the seaman who came back to glory minus both his hands, Years is right out of your neighbors' lives, or maybe even your own. The pace of the picture is a bit leisurely. Almost a full hour is required to set the mood and the motivation, but never does it pall. Not a line or scene is spurious. The people live, they are not mere shadow etchings on a silver sheet. The realism is graphic, the story compelling. The romantic frailties and the human little problems confronting each of the group are typical of the headlines in stressing the impact of post-war readjustment and faith in the future."
Was anyone else impressed when Dana Andrews went back as a soda jerk or whatever, working the ice cream counter, the way he was putting those sundaes together? I'm like, he really trained for this role. Like, if he's playing a chef, he was in the kitchen staging. He was making moves, making those sundaes.
Yeah, they looked good. They looked like good sundaes. There are a lot of steps involved in making those, I believe. So, yeah, it was good. And obviously, this is the review I was thinking of that mentions, the audience themselves may have experienced this.
Yeah, it's maybe bigger themes here, Josh, but say the loss of the ice cream counter coincided with the loss of American innocence.
Yeah, it is amazing to watch these old movies and see the soda jerks and the drugstores and how much stuff was in there. Like when Dana Andrews' character, when he first walks into the drugstore and he's sort of bewildered by it, and obviously what it is that some national chain is taken over from the mom and pop store where he used to work. There's so much stuff in there that I thought he was bewildered because it had been turned into like a giant department store or something. But no, that's just what drugstores used to have. They had a whole lunch counter. They had a whole perfume section. They had all this stuff. It was like the center of commerce in the town.
Well, we used to go to one. It was not our center of commerce, but in Las Vegas, we used to go to the White Cross drugstore because we loved the grill counter over there. But, if I needed Afro Sheen, that would have been a fine place for me to go as well. I prefer grilled cheese.
Isn't it Vicky's Diner still open?
And if Vicky's is open, it's moved, I think. So
okay.
It's not the same. You're not going into a drugstore of yesteryear in a terrible neighborhood and where a little Greek man named Lou is slinging fast, hot items at you from the counter.
That's true. That place did have a very old school kind of charm where maybe Dana Andrews would have been making some sundaes behind the counter.
I still remember Lou would ask, he said, "What to drink?" And I'd say, "Coke." And no matter what, he would, every time I say Coke, he'd say, "You want the liquid or the powder?"
Oh, the classic. Like that. The waitress in Hell or High Water who always says, "What don't you want?" That's how you order.
See, do you see what I'm saying? This loss of innocence. We have these nice jokes together,
true.
and yeah,
it's true. It's something that we've really missed here in our modern era. So I had not seen this one, although I've seen quite a few William Wyler films, and we've talked about him multiple times on the podcast already. Jason, I think you had not seen this one either.
I had not, but I've seen probably 5 Wyler movies, and for this one, I went above and beyond, guys. I watched Ben-Hur, which is 17 hours long.
You really went for the longest movie. This plus Ben-Hur, both. It's not like this was a short one either. You really went all out, and I appreciate that.
So, we're recording on a Friday. I started last Saturday, and I just finished 17 minutes ago. So.
That's not true, but I mean, I feel that I saw Ben-Hur one time in a theater, and I feel like that was great. Not only because you get the big picture, but also when you see a movie like that, you have to sit down in the theater. You have to sit down and watch it from beginning to end. You're not tempted to take all these breaks, which I think happens with long movies a lot. So, Dave, have you watched any other Wyler movies since the last time we talked about him on the podcast?
Not since the last time, no. I also saw Ben-Hur in the theater once.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that's how I watched that one. But I'd definitely be happy to watch more of these.
Yeah, he's great. And he's, we'll talk maybe more a little later, but, he's worked in a lot of genres, and he was just one of the great kind of workhorse directors of classic Hollywood.
Yeah.
Why would you watch Ben-Hur at home? that's my Charlton Heston.
I'm glad because I don't think we've talked about a Charlton Heston movie at any point on the podcast. So you got to bring that in there.
It's so efforted. Yeah. I mean, I would love to see a conversation with him and our man Russell from this one, who is for a man in Boone City, he has a real thick Boston accent.
He does. Yeah. He doesn't sound like a Boone City native, but of course, no. Boone City is fictional, so who knows what a Boone City
It's a metropolis,
like.
Yeah,
exactly. It's Gotham City. It's whatever, it's one of those. So anything else you want to say about the background of this movie, Jason?
I think I'm going to write a book of blank verse poetry, and I'm going to have Dave turn it into music videos.
Yeah, that seems like the right trajectory for this. So we'll come back and talk some more general thoughts on the best years of our lives. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1946, we're talking about Oscar's Best Picture winner, The Best Years of Our Lives. And Jason, I think I like this a bit more than you did. You felt like it fell off after the first hour?
Yeah, I mean, and it is falling off like the right wording. I don't know. Like you said, like the movie has to progress, right? So you can't just stay where it is. But I just found that first hour was like the most emotionally tense hour because these guys, they're coming home. They are trying to adapt and keep whatever secrets they need to keep. Their wives, lovers, girlfriends, families are trying to adjust to them being home and being supportive or not supportive in certain cases, right? And, once they get back to normal life, whatever the struggles are, didn't seem to have that emotional resonance or kind of urgency to me anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, I think there is, maybe it's less urgent. There's less of the tension because I think on that first night when they come home, especially because they go out and get drunk, and you feel like these guys are maybe they've got PTSD, they're volatile in some way. You don't know what's going to happen. And then as they settle back into normal life, yes, they have difficulties, but they're not non-functional. These aren't people like we saw in that documentary who can't get through a day, who can't go through normal tasks. Like they are functional even though they have their difficulties. So it's a different way of looking at that struggle, but I felt like it was just as valuable. It is sort of weirdly structured in that the first hour of the movie essentially is that first day, or like it's unclear. It takes them a long time to travel back, so maybe it's 2 days or something like that. But that's the first hour, and then the next hour and 50 minutes is months of time. So it is a sort of lopsided structure, but I was engaged the whole way.
So I don't mind from that structure because those first 2 days they're all avoiding going home, right? They're
Right.
avoiding getting back into real life. So that's what you're seeing, and you're seeing just how important it is. Even when they get home, they all end up at Butch's because that's where Russell said it's his uncle's bar, it's the greatest, and we all got to go. And they all end up there in different ways, right? Russell leaves his family to go out, and Dana Andrews and his wife have a fight, so he's out. And then Fredric March just takes his whole family with him.
Right. I mean, I think at that point, actually, Dana Andrews' character, he has not found his wife.
Right. He went to look for her.
Yeah, he's looking for her because he goes back home to his father and stepmother, and they say she's not living with us anymore, and she works at a nightclub, but they don't know where. So he's trolling all these nightclubs trying to find her, and he can't find her, and then he ends up at Butch's.
Yes, and his father and mother apparently are the only people who have an apartment in a junkyard under a train station.
Yeah, they live in the bad part of Boone City. Wherever that is.
East Boone City.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I thought one thing that it does well also is showing that range of the socioeconomic status of these people, right? They all are sort of equal while they're in the military, while they're at war, but then they come home and Dana Andrews, right? He's this working class guy. His father and stepmother, they live in this pretty rundown area in this rundown house. And he's the best job he can get is as a soda jerk. And you've got Fredric March, Al, who is clearly this upper class or upper middle class bank executive. He lives in a fancy apartment. And at one point he says to his wife, to Myrna Loy, "Oh, I need to go back to work because we need money." And she's like, "No, we're fine." So obviously they have quite the cushion and all that. They once had a maid. And then Harold Russell kind of in the middle, living in what looks like a suburban Boone City in this sort of nice little suburban house with his parents. So you got the range of people, range of socioeconomic status.
And he's going to be on disability and pension for the rest of his life because of his war injuries there. So, but so to get to that, you were saying they all adjust and function. I would say the Harold Russell character has the hardest time reacclimating to life. One, he doesn't need to go to work, or how many jobs can he do with his injuries. Two, he's not trying to go to work, and three, he's not trying to rectify his situation with his sweetheart, or necessarily his father helps him kind of get in and out of clothes or whatever it is, and they do that, but they don't really talk about it. It's just like, hey, this is now the new normal for us. So to me, it seemed like he had the hardest time. And he was the first one that suggested, hey, guys, instead of going home, how about we go to Butch's right now,
Right. And he does have that hard time. But at the same time, he has this arc toward being more well-adjusted. And I really liked the presentation of the women in these men's lives because, they have their own kind of difficult adjustment. And so you have his sweetheart, and one of his sort of difficulties is he assumes that because of his injury, she won't want to be with him anymore. That before he left, they were supposed to be engaged and they were going to get married. But now that she won't want, and he can't accept that she still loves him and she still wants to get married to him. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, that you would expect maybe this kind of storyline would be that, oh, he'd be rejected by, people in his life because of the way he looks now, because of his injuries. And that's not the case. And I would imagine that this is the kind of person where even if he doesn't need to get a job, he will want to try and get a job of some kind and feel useful and productive in some way, because that will give him a feeling of self-worth.
And I think you could assume that after he's kind of healed himself, he will get a job again. I did like the women, but other than Teresa Wright, I thought the two others, Myrna Loy and Harold Russell's sweetheart, only were given so much to play. I think we needed a few more, kind of in between beats to see how they got to where they got to.
Yeah, I suppose. Kathy O'Donnell is the actress who plays Homer's sweetheart there. I thought Myrna Loy was very good here too. And I liked, again, that you get the sense of these characters, who've been married for 20 years, which is a big contrast between, Homer, who is just engaged to this sweetheart, and then Dana Andrews' character, who got married kind of on a whim, like a few weeks before shipping out, and doesn't really know his wife at all. But these people have had a long marriage before he was sent off to war. And I really got the sense of their comfort with each other, that she understands him. And, his big difficulty is he's basically an alcoholic. And I liked also, we don't resolve that. He's still an alcoholic at the end of the movie. And she knows how to kind of rein him in. There's that great moment when he's at this fancy dinner for the bank that he works at, and she's worried about how he's going to act. And she's making marks on the tablecloth of how many drinks he's had. I felt like she embodied that really well.
She did a good job. I just didn't think there was a ton for her to do, is what I'm saying. Like, it was point A to point B. That scene is good because he sticks up for his fellow veterans and the idea that they should be getting everything that was promised to him. And you think it's going to backfire, but it's basically, good PR. So the bank goes along with it, and he knows, yeah, of course they're going to go along with it, because what else could they do, But I know how they really feel.
Right. And you have the kind of smarmy bank president who clearly knows that he can't be perceived as like not being pro-veteran, but obviously also doesn't want to give loans to these veterans. And so he has to kind of weasel his way in between there every time he talks to Al and every time they discuss policy or whatever. So I thought that was a good presentation too.
The biggest thing that we haven't talked about is this, I don't even want to call it a love triangle, but a forbidden love with Dana Andrews' character and Teresa Wright. Teresa Wright is Fredric March's Peggy. She plays Fredric March's daughter. And, right away, there's this kind of, I don't even know it's a push-pull attraction, but he's married to someone who he had just met, like right in basic training before he got shipped off. And she works in a nightclub and she's making her own money, and she doesn't want to live a normal life in an apartment in lower middle class. She wants to go and make money and be on the town the whole time. And so, again, it's the 40s. It's a forbidden love. It's forbidden by the father. It's forbidden by society, but they can't be kept apart, Josh.
Yeah, and I thought that was handled really well, because you can tell, they have great chemistry right away. And so you can believe that attraction to each other. And then, of course, Dana Andrews' wife, it's Virginia Mayo, who plays that character. She's, whether she is a bad person or not, maybe, but she's clearly not right for him.
They're just a bad match. I don't think she's a bad person. She's probably cheating on him with that other guy who treats her well and takes her out. But there's no future for these two.
Right, exactly. And I like that it was honest about that. Again, we have the Hays Code. And so things like this and extramarital affairs have to be handled very cautiously. But there's that one scene where after they share this kiss, they have a lunch together and they have a kiss, and Teresa Wright comes home and she tells her parents, I'm going to break up this marriage. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And she's adamant about it. And I liked that it was straightforward there. Like, we're in love. His wife sucks. She's not for him. I'm the one for him. I'm going to make them get divorced.
Well, I would counter that by saying I like the Dana Andrews kind of verbiage and attitude of like, he kisses her and he's like, I shouldn't have done that, but if I see you, it's going to happen again. Every time I see you, this is going to keep happening. Which I thought was like that good, kind of like that forbidden love, like that the temptation is too strong, Josh.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And I mean, we could say that's the kind of thing that obviously doesn't require this being a story about veterans. And maybe that's more along the lines of this is what we included here for the interest of general audiences or whatever. But it's effectively integrated, I think, and finding someone that you can connect with and who understands you in a relationship, I think is just as important for these guys when they come home as anything else.
Well, I'll disagree with you on the veteran part because it has to do with the Fredric March and Dana Andrews characters as equals when they're on the battlefield and the respect that they have for each other. And then the complete disapproval of March of what Dana Andrews is doing with his daughter, but he still respects him as a soldier. So they sit down and have a very tense conversation. And the other aspect of that is the idea of, Andrews, he's already, his marriage is already faltering because he's going to be lower middle class. And he tells Virginia Mayo, like, look, it's never going to be easy. We're always going to have to struggle. This is always going to be how it's going to be. And she goes along with it.
Right. Virginia Mayo does not. That's
Peggy.
Peggy.
Teresa Wright.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. His wife is not about that, but Peggy, yes, she's really in love with him, and she's fine with that. We learned she's worked as a nurse throughout the war, so she understands this sacrifice and all of that. But yeah, that's fair. And I think that point that you made about those characters having been equal on the battlefield, but now they come back to society and they're back in their societal roles that are not equal. That's really important. And that was what I was saying about the sort of economic status of all these people. But you're right that it applies also to this kind of interpersonal status where right now this guy becomes the disapproving father of the woman that Dana Andrews is essentially going to try to have an affair with or whatever. And that's a completely different position than their respect as military officers. And in fact, Dana Andrews leaves the military with a higher rank than Fredric March, which is something that comes up a couple times. So it is an interesting dynamic. You're right about that.
Josh, you ever had a forbidden love?
I know I have not, thankfully, had any forbidden love, really, of any kind. I think it seems very stressful. So I would prefer not to have forbidden love. So I don't know, Jason, have you had forbidden love?
I think I've had forbidden lust, but I don't know about forbidden love ever. But let's ask another question. Josh, what would your position be in the war?
Yeah, well, I mean, my position would be, I feel like this war is one where people, like in Vietnam, right? Tons of people are trying to run away to Canada or do other things in order to avoid getting drafted. Not so much during this war, but I feel like I would be the guy. I would be the draft dodger in World War II.
All right. I thought you were going to just go with your classic dead.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I failed at being a draft dodger, then probably dead. Although, if you always talk about, Jason, that like your skills as a performer could have gotten you in a better position.
I'd be all on these USO tours. Come on, we know that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And especially during this war, there were war correspondents. Look at all these directors that we've talked about. They were given the position of making, propaganda films because they had this skill. I feel like I could have written for the, Army official magazine or something like that. Or my grandfather, my actual grandfather, was a radio operator, and I don't believe was ever in any battlefield situation. So, something like that. Maybe if I could have gotten my way into that, maybe.
That sounds safer than correspondent. I feel like you'd have to be in the trenches or on the front line to be reporting back.
Yeah. I don't know. But Something like that. I'm not going to be on the USO tour. I'm not out there singing the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy song, but maybe
I'm introducing the Andrews sisters on these bases,
right.
mopping up after Bob Hope. Exactly, right. Dude. I got this. This is prime time.
How about you, Dave? Are you going to make it on the battlefield?
I hope me and you are just like running as far north as we can, Josh.
Right. I think, but the problem is that Canada also participated in this war. Fuck. So I don't know if that would have worked. Yeah.
Could you go to
in Vietnam, but this
maybe you could go to Mexico and join the Mexican cinema revolution of the time period.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, you could have recruited Buster Keaton and put him in
put him
movies
in the moon. Yeah.
The moon.
I feel like regardless, though, all of us are coming back deeply traumatized.
Honestly, Josh, do any of us get through a day at this point without being traumatized?
Right, and look, we've all had these nice, comfortable lives, and that's still where we're at.
I mean, I don't have a maid. I do have a cleaning person that I hire once every 2 weeks, and if it goes longer than that, I just feel like, I need this cleaning person here in my house. I can't handle it. So.
Right. Think about the things that we're having
incapable of.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And yet, we've versus, the Dana Andrews keeps waking up from these nightmares about some horrific battle.
Like that guy in the Light movie.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, exactly like those guys. And we probably talked about this exact same topic when we did that episode just a few episodes ago. But I mean, they're clearly having those difficulties, and Homer talks about the way he lost his hands when his ship went down, and implies that he might have been the only survivor of that. I mean, these are really, really horrific situations that they've dealt with.
Yes, I agree. What's your go-to? What's your ice cream sundae go-to?
A sunnier topic. Yeah, I mean, chocolate, vanilla, maybe, one scoop of each, some hot fudge, some whipped cream. I'm all about that. Yeah.
He's going for it, Dave.
Why not? Yeah. Like you said, they make a good sundae here. I'm going to get that. Versus the guy who comes in, and we haven't talked about this aspect, the guy who is essentially seems to be pro-Nazi, who comes in, he orders a ham sandwich, and that doesn't look like it was as carefully constructed.
You think he's pro-Nazi, or is he's one, an isolationist, and two, an anti-Semite?
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely clear because we don't get a long scene with him, but he does say at one point that we joined the war on the wrong side.
Yeah, and they kick the shit out of him, which he deserves. Fuck you, bitch. Go back to your MAGA house.
They do. But it's interesting to see, because this was only, I think, 7 months after the war ended that this was released. And no one knows necessarily where sort of the mood of the country or things are going to go. At one point, Harold Russell, the father of his sweetheart there, his future father-in-law, talks about how he thinks that there's going to be, this big economic downturn now that all the soldiers have returned, where, of course, it was the opposite. This led to a huge boom time, the baby boomer era, and like one of the biggest expansions of the American economy, but people having a surprisingly gloomy attitude toward the future here.
Yeah, if you're going to have a gloomy attitude towards the future, now's the time to do
it. Yes. We also have Nazi apologists now.
No, we just have Nazis now again. It's even worse. One thing I wanted to talk about, one scene towards the end, it's our man Greg Tolan, the excellent cinematographer from Citizen Kane. And he's using deep focus, so like everything foreground, background is in focus. And it's shot, basic coverage mostly throughout, nothing fancy. And then you get to the end, other than like the flight stuff, which, Wyler had actually flown in missions. So, but you get to the end and there's this plane graveyard, which is pretty interesting. One, as a setting, I don't think I've ever seen that on film before, right? Where like all these decommissioned warplanes just go and rot or go to die. Although in this case, they're repurposing them as like housing materials, right? And Dana Andrews goes into the plane, like one of the bombers that he himself, his character, had flown. And the way that they shoot this, now we're getting movement, we're getting push-ins and dolly moves, it looks like. And it's a totally different way of shooting than the rest of the movie, which matched the kind of hazy confusion and fear that Andrew's character was reliving.
Yeah, and that's a great scene, which again was shot in a real plane graveyard in California, where presumably they had to capture it right at the moment before those planes were taken and broken down and reused or whatever. I would say though that there are other visually impressive moments in this movie. One thing I noticed is there's a scene where Virginia Mayo and Teresa Wright characters they've all gone out, right? They've decided, Dana Andrews and his wife and Peggy and her like boyfriend or suitor or whatever, they're all going out together to this nightclub, and Virginia Mayo and Teresa Wright, they go into the ladies' bathroom, which this is another thing from old movies, the fanciness of ladies' bathrooms. They're sitting at this vanity table with like multi-tiered mirrors. And the way that Toland shoots that scene is just absolutely astonishing, with the different reflections and the blocking of it, so that when the characters are conversing with each other, one of them is in the foreground and one of them is in a reflection, and then he switches it up. I watched that scene and I was just absolutely amazed. And it's just a simple conversation scene, but the way it's shot with those reflections to show you sort of the duplicity of what these women aren't saying to each other is really fascinating.
Yeah, Toland's a goat, bro.
Yes.
You know what I like about the 40s? Every movie had a dance scene.
Yeah, they do go to that very crowded nightclub, and they're not even barely.
I mean, they dance at Butch's also at the beginning.
True. They do. Yeah, we get Hoagie again. Our guy Hoagie Carmichael playing the piano, letting them dance away.
There you go. Should we rate it, Josh or Dave? You got anything to say?
I was just impressed at how not hokey it ended up being. I really was expecting it to be like this hokey, people are scarred by war, which of course they are, but like I thought it was going to be so on the nose, and it ended up being like a really great character piece about these people. And I think Fredric March really like steals the show, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that this movie could be super overblown and melodramatic, but it feels real. It feels honest. And I think part of it is the length, because you spend all this time with these people and getting to know them. So one other thing that I just wanted to point out that was like a little moment that I appreciated is when Dana Andrews comes home and discovers his wife is going out with this other guy who is like the slick operator who, doesn't have all the issues that Dana Andrews has. And we learn that this guy is also a veteran. And I like that it showed that like some of these guys are just like, whatever, I'm back and I'm chilling. That was a possibility as well. And that's a small moment, but I like that as a contrast.
I also liked in that moment that he calls him brother. I thought
brother, let me tell you something, brother. Well, now I'm working towards the Russell Yar. The way he says yeah is like, Yar, I'm home from the war.
Yeah, you got to work a little more.
Well, I didn't even try. Let's just rate this thing, Josh.
All right, let's do it. Should we rate it out of 5 hook hands?
I guess I was going to say 5 years.
Sure.
That's fine. So
yeah,
we'll do hook hands for you, Josh. So I gave it 3. I like it. It's long. 3 for me.
All right, I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5. I definitely liked it more than you did. It is long, but I feel like it's definitely worth the effort. I'm glad that I checked it out. Dave, how do you rate this?
I'm going with 3, but yeah, it was definitely better than I was expecting when it first started, and really glad to have seen it.
All right. Well, we'll come back and talk about the legacy of the best years of our lives. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1946, we have been talking about the best years of our lives, the Best Picture winner at the Oscars. And William Wyler, the director, we have discussed a couple times. We did episodes on Wuthering Heights and The Little Foxes. As we said, he was a veteran himself. He was, like John Huston, involved in the war. He made these propaganda films and came back and had an even bigger career. I mean, post this movie, some of his major films, The Heiress, Roman Holiday, Ben-Hur that you mentioned, Jason, The Children's Hour, and all the way through Funny Girl. I mean, he had this incredibly long career, won 3 Oscars for Best Director. I feel like in a way, maybe he's underrated because he has less of this distinctive personal style.
I think you're right. I mean, and we've talked about certain directors like that before who have won, huge awards like Bruce Beresford when we did Driving Miss Daisy, right? You don't think of him as like you think of him as a working director, a workman type guy, right? But a lot of these actors who are, especially the actresses, I mean, he directed Audrey Hepburn and Barbra Streisand in their debuts, and both won Academy Awards. And Olivia de Havilland and Bette Davis both won their second Academy Awards in Wyler movies. So, he's very good at working with actors and especially actresses.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see the acting in this movie. Working with someone like Harold Russell, who had never acted before. And I wouldn't necessarily have guessed that from watching this movie. I mean, I think Wyler gets a very good performance out of him. So clearly an actor's director, and he worked a lot with Bette Davis. I'm a big fan of hers. And we talked about The Little Foxes. The Letter, which is an absolutely fantastic noir with Bette Davis, is another big favorite of mine, of their collaborations.
Didn't they end up hating each other?
Maybe. That sounds right. I feel like a lot of people that Bette Davis worked with, she had these sort of love-hate relationships with. So it's very possible. I'm not sure about that, but maybe.
All right. Well, this is our third William Wyler. One more, and you get the honorary Rob Reiner Hall of Fame nod.
Yes. So important. I feel like we've done less keeping track of all these directors that we've covered multiple times, but Rob Reiner will always be the champ because he was the first.
Josh, I got it all in my head. Don't you worry.
That's good. Thank you. I appreciate you keeping track of these things. So these actors, not necessarily A-list stars, but all of these, I mean, Harold Russell aside, but, most of these actors went on to, had been working very steadily and continued to do so. Fredric March started in the 20s, worked through the 70s. He won 2 Oscars for this film, as well as for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He won 2 Tonys. I know him more for, earlier work. We talked about this film, Designed for Living, when we talked about Ernst Lubitsch in our Clooney Brown episode. He's great in that. I also loved him in I Married a Witch with Veronica Lake, which is a super fun film.
Josh, I'll tell you my favorite Fredric March performance. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. It's good enough for me. Matthew Harrison Brady, Inherit the Wind. Great film, playing against Spencer Tracy at his best. High recommendation. He is the antagonist of that film.
Yeah, I think I feel like, Jason, we might have watched that in school together. I don't think I've seen it since then.
You are correct. We have done that. Josh, in 1929, he made 7 movies.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what you did back then.
Yeah. So I will tell you, talk about underrated. He and Helen Hayes are the only 2 actors to have won Academy Awards and Tony Awards twice.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised that hasn't happened again, especially now. I feel like people go back and forth between those a lot more. But yeah, I mean, like, an impressive career, but again, not necessarily super A-list. Dana Andrews worked also steadily from the 1940s through the 80s. He was more of a B-list guy. He was in a lot of noirs and a lot of Westerns. And later he did TV, including daytime soap operas. He did B-movies. The main thing, I mean, he was in a couple great noirs, including Laura and Fallen Angel. But the thing I was thinking of while watching this was the movie 0 Hour, which is the disaster movie that is parodied in Airplane that we talked about in our Airplane episode. That I think, Dave, did you watch that also? I know I watched that.
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. Ridiculous.
The 2 I'd point out are Swamp Water, which I think is an English language Renoir movie, since we just talked about that.
Yeah.
And the classic The Oxbow Incident.
Oh, that is a good one. Yeah. Harold Russell did not really have an acting career, but not necessarily surprising. Even now, I think it's tough for disabled actors like that to get roles that are not about them being disabled. And that was what happened a couple times. He appeared on TV in episodes of Trapper John, MD, and China Beach, but always playing this kind of disabled veteran, but became a longtime activist for veterans and for the disabled. Unfortunately, eventually sold his Oscar for $60,000 because he needed money, but it was later returned to the Academy by the purchaser.
I mean, he did it to pay for his wife's medical bill, so it's an honorable cause.
It is. I think, I don't know if it was him or maybe someone else who did this, but I believe that and maybe one or two other instances of actors or other people doing that led the Academy to make you, I think now if you win an Oscar, you have to like sign an agreement that you will never sell
Yeah, you have to let your wife die instead.
it. Hopefully you can, now you can start a GoFundMe instead.
Josh,
healthcare in America has not improved since the 40s.
No bueno, sir. No bueno. Let's talk about the ladies, Josh.
Yes.
Do it.
Oh, okay.
Do it, Josh.
I thought you had something.
Okay, I got plenty of stuff to say if you want, but I was giving you a chance. Myrna Loy, who Josh loves, the Thin Man series, and the original Cheaper by the Dozen. What else, Josh? What else do you want to tell us about her?
I mean, she worked with William Powell on those Thin Man movies, but also a bunch of other films. They are a great classic romantic comedy pairing. I love Libeled Lady, which was a very, very funny screwball comedy from the 30s that she's in. She worked less in later years, but also had a very long career all the way until retiring in 1981. She also served during World War II in the Red Cross. So, all these people who had that firsthand experience. She was never nominated for an Oscar, but she did win an honorary Oscar in 1991.
Teresa Wright did win an Oscar for, yes, a William Wyler film, and we've mentioned it before, Mrs. Miniver, 1942, also nominated for The Pride of the Yankees in the same year, I think.
Yeah, we talked about her in our episode on The Little Foxes, another William Wyler film. And she's great in that. She's great here. She is so good in Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, which I probably mentioned then. And it's a shame to read, you see her in these early roles and see how good she is. And because she stood up for herself against the studio system and against Samuel Goldwyn in the 1940s, she had this real downturn and never got the same level of roles that she got earlier in her career. She did work steadily in TV, but, never quite reached the heights that you thought she might have.
What tell us more about that conflict with her and Goldwyn.
I mean, I think it was, the idea that, at this time, right, actors were all under contract with studios. They didn't get to choose their roles. And so, she, even from the beginning, in her early contracts, had very specific things about, not being required to do like sort of cheesecake photo shoots and things like that. And she spoke out against it, and Goldwyn canceled her contract and presumably had the power to blacklist her from other contracts as well.
Boo.
So, unfortunate. That's the way that things were then. I mean, and certainly there's consequences to speaking out on controversial issues now for actors as well, even if we don't have the same system.
Josh, do you know who the biggest box office draw for Warner Brothers was in the late 1940s?
Was it Teresa Wright?
Virginia Mayo herself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who often co-starred with the legendary Danny Kaye, can be seen in films like White Heat and Captain Horatio Hornblower.
Yeah, and I wonder if she was a big draw because Danny Kaye was a big draw and she was in those movies too, or if she herself, because I feel like she's not necessarily someone we think of as like a major star from this era.
Yeah, but if you look back, all of these like women who were like top box office draws seem to be left out or revised to not be as important. Like we talked about Lillian Gish, right? Not too long ago. She was a huge box office star in the early 1900s, but you always hear, and we should hear about Chaplin and Keaton, but we should also hear about Lillian Gish.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, in this movie, at least, Virginia Mayo doesn't have a huge part, but that's not to say that she wasn't key. I haven't seen any of those comedies that she made with Danny Kaye or much of her other work. But I mean, I don't mean to discount her talents or anything like that, certainly.
Yeah, so knock it off, Josh.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. We forgive you.
I mentioned McKinley Cantor, who I found kind of interesting, who wrote this blank verse novel. He was mainly a novelist, was very prolific. He won a Pulitzer Prize in 1956 for his novel Andersonville, and was known for eschewing punctuation, a major influence on Cormac McCarthy.
And a major influence on Christopher Walken, even if he didn't know it, because when Christopher Walken gets a script, he crosses out all punctuation so he can do his own thing with it.
I did not know that, but that makes sense with Christopher Walken's style of speech.
I know.
It's always great if we can we got Charlton Heston, we got Christopher Walken. We're really bringing them all together here in this episode.
Once I get that Russell impression done, we're rocking and rolling, baby.
Absolutely. So anything else you want to say about the legacy of this film?
What were the best years of your life?
I hope they're still to come.
We all hope that for you.
And for all of us, right?
Yeah, but we're just talking about you right now.
Okay, I guess, but I hope it for you as well.
I think it's possible for me and you, not for Dave. His life's gone down the shitter these last few years.
Dave's life is over. Yeah, that's nice. Well, if we keep doing this podcast, then we at least have that to look forward to.
That's true. And that's all we need, fellas. That and a good night out at Butch's.
All right. So that is the best years of our lives. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can check us out online and on social media.
We are online and on social media, just like Josh just told you. We're at Awesome Movie Pod, Awesome Pod Movie, Awesome Movie, AwesomeMoviePod.com is the website. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy on all the things. Find me at Go for Jason on Letterboxd. Check out CityCast Las Vegas, where I am a regular correspondent now.
Jason has so many things happening, so we're honored that you continue to grace our humble podcast.
I tell usually it's never the top two, but I tell my third assistant, I say, you make sure you carve out an hour for me every week to talk to Josh and Dave.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So you can find some old things from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, as much as I like to not have Dave say things, I'm going to let him talk because it is Dave's pick.
Oh, boy. I do not know what to expect with this one. It is a movie featuring the Three Stooges. It's called The Swing Parade of 1946. And I don't know anything about it except that the Three Stooges are in it.
Well, that's really the best thing, is to not know anything about the movies we're going to discuss.
Hey, I did that earlier this year and it worked out fine.
There you go.
True. So we'll see how that goes. Tune in next time for Swing Parade of 1946. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.
That is this season. You want to turn off your notifications there, Jason?
That would be nice.
I don't know how. On my phone?
You don't know how to turn off the notifications on your phone?
What? Oh, I do, but not on my computer. Let's see.
There's no way that's your computer.
No way that's your computer. I'm a nerdy podcast guy.
Dave, I think you need to take control of Jason's desktop to turn off the notifications.
Let's just go. No one's going to text me again.
Sure they aren't. They've only done it twice in the last 5 minutes, but
Dave, leave all this in.
Oh,
this is good.
This is going after the end of the episode.
This is the the inside baseball, the real suit.
Yeah,
Josh.
Really, really, really good. So, all right. Shall we continue?